Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. As you can see from the title, I caught up with Jonathan Reid from the Contender a week or so back. We spoke about his career before the Contender, notably his fight against William Joppy for the WBA title, Jonathan's time on the Contender, what he went on to do after the show, and if being on the show helped, and a little bit about his thoughts on some of the current crop of boxers. You'll find below in the description I have put timestamps there for each question asked to help you navigate through the interview should you need them. This was my first interview I've done and I really enjoyed it. I had a blast. And I'm looking forward to doing more in the future. I never thought watching back the show and doing the videos on my channel that I'd be interviewing one of the guys that was on it. So it's been a great experience and I'd like to thank you guys for that because I wouldn't be doing it if you guys hadn't been showing me the support that you have been. So without further ado, this is the interview with the Contender Season 1 alumni, Jonathan Reid. Jonathan, tell me a little bit about how you got into boxing in the first place.
Well, when I was 9, my father started teaching me karate. I went through my ring of, doing martial arts and things of that nature. Went through school and all that good stuff. So after I graduated from high school, I got in trouble with the law. And while I was in jail, I called home collect. And one of the questions my father asked me was, what are you going to do now that you have 2 marks against your name? One mark is, being a black man in America, which is hard for us anyway.
Right.
And then having been a felon.
Okay.
So I told my dad that I thought about kickboxing. And he said, well, why don't you box instead of kickbox? Because boxers have longer careers. Mm-hmm. So he said he'd find me a gym. And when I got out of jail, I got out of jail September the 1st of 93. And we walked into a boxing gym September the 2nd of the same year.
All right. So what age were you then?
Ooh, Lord. I was 21.
21? That's relatively late for someone to come into the boxing gym. Did you find it difficult at all?
No, I didn't find it difficult. The only thing I had to do different was, in karate, your stance is longer than a boxing stance. My boxing coach had to, inform me and teach me that I needed to shorten my stance up because if I didn't shorten my stance up, I would find myself having harder fights than I needed to have. So we shortened my stance up and just started working from there.
And that time in the boxing gym led you to your fight in Las Vegas against William Joppy for the WBA belt. A fight that, if my research is correct, you took on 4 days' notice. How did that fight come about and what was it like to fight in Las Vegas?
The fight took place, it was 7 days' notice.
7 days, okay.
Joppy was supposed to fight somebody else. He was supposed to fight a guy named Guillermo Jones, and Guillermo Jones couldn't make couldn't make the fight. So they called us with 7 days left to get ready, and they offered an amount of the purse, and we turned it down.
Right.
So they offered they called back in about 30 minutes or less and offered us another amount, and they doubled the first amount. We jumped on it. We were in a win-win situation. If I would have beat William Joppy, my next fight guaranteed with Felix Trinidad for $2.5 million. Joppy beat me. Trinidad beat William Joppy. Mm-hmm. And then Felix Trinidad fought Hopkins. That's when Don King was having a middleweight box-off.
After the defeat to William Joppy, you had 6 more fights before you were on the Contender. Describe for me the time in between the William Joppy fight and the Contender show. Because for someone who fought in Las Vegas to then go back to fighting in nightclubs, it does seem on the surface that you weren't getting the opportunities you wanted or maybe deserved.
When I lost to Joppy, I went into a slight depressive state. I went into the Joppy fight undefeated. I was 26-0.
Right.
And I'm going in the fight thinking I'm gonna be the champ. I'm about to beat this dude. He beat me. So that put me in a depressive state. I fought the fight at 160 pounds. So after the fight, because I was depressed, I got up to like 205 pounds or something like that. And a friend of mine I worked out in the gym with all the time, Barrett, who was on the 2nd season of the Contender.
Right.
He called me one day and asked me, was I coming to the gym? I said, man, I ain't coming to the gym. And he said, I need some sparring, man. I said, man, I ain't coming in there to spar with you. I said, how much you weigh? He was like 140 something pounds. I said, man, you done lost your mind. I ain't coming in to spar. I'm 200 some odd pounds. He said, all right, Reid, well, why don't you come to the gym anyway? And we ain't got to spar. But he said, when you get down back in the 170s, he said, then we'll get in the ring and move around.
Okay.
I said, all right. So he helped motivate me to get me back in there.
So as you say, you were back in the gym training, but how did that lead to getting onto the Contender? Did you see a flyer? Were you actively approached, or did your team tell you about it? I'm aware that there were auditions. Did you have to go down to audition?
I was doing personal training at a gym in Nashville at the time. It was called the Cummins Station Fitness Center, where I trained for boxing. I also trained in that gym as well. And they had a fitness center, and the boxing gym was in the back of the center. As I was closing the gym that night, the phone rang, and I wasn't going to answer it. But the phone rang. It was someone calling from California asking, was our gym a real boxing gym? I said, yeah, it's a real boxing gym. I said, why? Then they started telling us about the show, telling me about the show. Then I said, well, I heard that all they were doing were amateur boxers. And the lady told me, no, it wasn't true. She said, we're taking professionals as well. I said, oh, really? I said, what do I have to do to get on it? She said, well, you have to audition. I said, then she told me the closest place for me to audition was Tunica, Mississippi. So we drove to Tunica and went and auditioned. We had I sparred a little bit with somebody that was there. And then I did a verbal interview with, some of the people that were producing the show. And, I was one of the 16 that was chosen.
So you made it onto the Contender, and speaking of the 16, prior to you being on the show, you had 34 fights, including your win over Carl Willis for the NABA title, and as we touched on earlier, your fight with William Joppy for the WBA title. Do you think it was this experience which made you one of, if not, the hot favourite to win the Contender?
I think it was. A lot of people thought that I would be the guy to win the whole thing, but in boxing, there's a lot of stuff that you don't look at. And as more Contender shows went on, a lot of things changed. During the first season, the fighters, we had to do challenges.
Yeah.
The challenges that we did were kind of strenuous, and it would take a lot out of you. And then you had to fight the next day. Mm-hmm. In true fighting, in true boxing, when you're getting prepared for a fight, let's say the week of the fight, you're not really working too hard. You may be shaking out a little bit to keep your sweat going. Mm-hmm. You're not working hard because you got your hard work coming at the end of the week or on fight night.
Right.
The night that I fought Jesse Brinkley, mm-hmm. And when we were doing the challenge, because they had already had somebody to fight on someone on our team, he beat Peter Manfredo. Yeah, there were 8 of those guys, and there was only 7 of us. So one of those guys had to sit out. So it would be
Jesse.
So Jesse raised his hand and said he was sitting out. I said he's the one that's fighting.
Yeah.
So during that challenge, we had to run the stairs. I want to say it was the football field, a big football stadium. We had to run the stairs. I went up the stairs more than anyone. Mm-hmm. So when we got done, we didn't figure out the puzzle. So the East team won again. The West team won. I just knew it. I told Brent Cooper, I said, they're picking me, man. Because I went up the stairs more than anybody. But, my legs was kind of gone. Not to take anything from Jesse's craft. Yep. He chose me and he won the fight, but I thought the fight was even because at the end of our fight, the crowd was stomping on the bleachers and clapping. Mm-hmm. One more round, right? One more round, which means that if they thought the fight was even, we had to fight one more round to see who goes on to the next phase.
Okay.
But the judges gave it to him.
So we'll get to Brent, Jesse, and your fight with Jesse Brinkley in a moment. You made it onto the show. Let's talk about the first day when the cameras are all on you and you meet the other contenders for the first time. Were you nervous? It seemed to me from the time we saw of you on the show that you were the type to take it all in your stride.
No, I wasn't nervous. I've been in front of the camera before, up to that point. Mm-hmm. The cameras didn't make me nervous. You just kind of being alert, looking at the other guys coming in when they're introducing everybody that made it. So you're looking at the other team, be like, I wonder if I had to go against him, or I wonder if I had to go against him. You're trying to read somebody's style by the way they walk or talk, or by the way you see them working out in the gym. Yeah. The nervousness didn't really come until it was time to get in the ring to fight. The bell rings and the first punch is thrown, and the nerves goes out the window.
So no nerves, as you say, but did you know anything about the other contenders coming into the show?
Of course I knew about Brent because we live in the same town. Mm-hmm. I knew about Ishe Smith. I knew about Peter Manfredo. And I also knew about Sergio Mora, because Sergio and I trained with Fernando Vargas in his camp at one time, getting him ready for a fight. So I knew Sergio was very crap.
And following that, who did you feel posed the biggest threat to you and your goal?
I would have to say Sergio, because he's he throws a lot of punches. A lot of people think that he doesn't have power. It's not really about having power, but if you keep getting hit with certain shots, it'll eventually break you down. So I thought Sergio would be one of the guys to look out for, and of course he won. We never had to fight each other because I lost my first fight, and then Jeff Fraza got sick. And they were going to vote either me or Peter back in, and Peter beat me by 4 votes. But it was good to be thought of anyway.
And let's not forget, on the first day, not only did you meet the contenders, you also got to meet Sylvester Stallone and Sugar Ray Leonard. What was that like?
For me, it was like, I guess, being around one of the fellas. A lot of people are starstruck. I'm not the type of person to get starstruck because I've met different people, in my time, and I don't really get excited because I see Sylvester Stallone or Sugar Ray Leonard or Mike Tyson or somebody like that. I just savor the moment and just sit back and try to listen to take advantage of the advice that they were trying to give. More the guys are probably listening more to Sugar Ray Leonard because Sugar Ray Leonard went through or did what it is that we were trying to do. He's a true fighter. Yeah. We looked at Sylvester Stallone as being someone that's a TV module. They make him look good on television, but he may have had some real fights in his lifetime, but we don't, it was nothing that we knew about.
Were they both as on hand as the show seemed to portray? If you needed to talk to them, did you have the ease of access to them?
Oh yeah, I mean, they were. We called it the Contender House or whatever, what have you. Yeah. I mean, they were always there. Everybody was in the house, living in the house. But once you lost, they would send you to, then we call it the loser house. We got sent somewhere else until the last taping of the show. Once the last taping of the show came, they sent us home, and we just had to sit back at the house and wait on the show to come out.
And as you said of the Contenders house, the Contenders lived and trained together. You lived with other men who frankly stood in the way of your goals. Did egos ever clash or fights break out?
Sure, some guys' egos, were reared up when it was working out. But when I worked out, I wouldn't really work out to my potential because I was thinking that, the guys are trying to look at you to see what you're doing, trying to, say, oh yeah, this is what he does. So I would, if I saw people looking at me, I would do something different. Yeah. And try to throw them off. But if I had anything to do different, if I had the chance to be on the show again, you have 16 guys coming in who are used to fighting 8 rounds, 10 rounds, or 12 rounds. We had to fight 5 rounds. Mm-hmm. In a 5-round bout, you don't really have time to use the first round to fill an opponent out, then maybe use the first 2 rounds to fill somebody out, because if you do that, say that opponent wins the first 2 rounds. Now you got to try to win the next 3 rounds in order to, win the fight, or you got to try to knock the person out. Sure. So if I had to do it all over again, I would go in like it's an amateur fight and just let my hands go and keep punching nonstop until the referee comes in and stops it, mm-hmm. or I get the majority of the points, and then at the end of the 5th round, I would win the fight.
You mentioned earlier fellow Season 1 alumni Brent Cooper, who was from your area and was also a Christian like yourself. Was it good to have someone from the same area and who shared the same faith as you on the show?
Yeah, it was good having Brent on the program because, if we ran into a problem or we needed to talk, we could we could talk to each other. I know him and he knows me. Mm-hmm. So it was good to be able to talk to each other. I just hate that I didn't win my first fight because I could have been there for Brent when he was getting prepared to fight the fight that he fought. Right. I wasn't there to help him out. And that kind of bothered me a little bit. But, once at the end, he's a man and I'm a man. We both had to do what we had to do. The cards fell where they fell, and his turnout was his turnout, my turnout was my turnout. So, we're both, just blessed that we were able to be on the show. because we didn't have to be on the show.
Let's pick up to some of the action from the first episode. We saw Ahmed and Ishe Smith clash together. From your perspective, was that all for the cameras, or was that real?
That was real.
Right.
Everything that happened on the show was it wasn't planned, anything like that. That was some real stuff.
And how about what we didn't see on the show? Because you seem like somewhat of a team captain, an experienced old head. Did any of the other contenders come up to you for advice at any stage?
Nobody really came to me for advice. I just noticed when Peter was getting ready to fight, who did he fight?
Alfonso.
When Peter was getting ready to fight Alfonso, Peter, his weight was a problem. So they didn't show it, but I went in the gym with him and he was running on a treadmill, and it was I was motivating him to, get his running in, try to get the weight off, and I sort of ran on the treadmill next to him to help motivate him to get ready and be ready for the fight. I think that may have been something that took away from the performance of him fighting Manfredo.
Okay.
Because he had to, use a lot of energy to try to get the weight off. And that's they teach us in boxing. When you want to try to stay at the most 7 pounds away from whatever your fight weight is. That way, when you're in the gym training for the fight, you're not having two fights. Mm-hmm. First fight is you trying to get the weight down, and the second fight would be you fighting the person that you're fighting on the night that you fight. Right. So if you stay close to your weight, somebody can call you and you can knock off 7 pounds and like it ain't nothing in a couple hours. Mm-hmm. Let alone in a 8-week or 6-week training camp.
And you stepped up to help Peter get ready for his fight, because in the first episode, you were in a challenge with your team where you have to tether 3 logs up a hill to the finish line. Along the way on signposts are the combinations for the locks to the logs, which you have to unlock at the end. I see you are smiling here, Jonathan. Your team ended up losing this challenge, and they seem to blame Ahmed for that loss. Were you all annoyed at him, considering it seemed he wasn't even trying to remember the combinations?
No, not really annoyed. I think at that time, Ahmed was for Ahmed, which, everybody should have been for themselves anyway. Right. I've always been a team player, meaning that if you have a gym full of guys and one person is getting ready for a fight, then the concentration is on that person getting ready for the fight. You're trying to help him out. If I had anything to do different in that challenge, I went in there trying to be honest, do things right, not cheat, so to speak. If I had to do anything different in that challenge, because I remember the combination, because I took the combination, I went through the combination, got the lock off the chain. Okay. I would have took our lock and locked it on their lock. They would have never been able to figure out what the lock is or what the combination is, because they weren't looking at our numbers.
And that's not against the rules, right?
If I could have remembered our numbers and their numbers, I would have sure locked their lock up.
You should have done it.
Yeah, I know. It's too late to do it now, though.
Yeah,
that would have been so fun.
Of course. That's brilliant. Should have definitely done it. But obviously that meant that for the first fight in the competition, you could have been picked. Did you feel you could have been first up to fight?
No, I didn't think I would have been first up. Not then, because I really didn't get the feeling that they was going to try to pick me first. Like some of the guys were kind of like, I don't know about Jonathan Reid. He's got a little experience. You don't want to mess with this guy yet. We'll see what's going to happen. But of course, Jesse Brinkley chose me in the second match, because I guess it was something that he saw, or he just, I know what he saw. He saw me running them damn bleachers, and he was sitting on his ass. Yeah. When I get off the phone with you, I might call him and let him know I'm flying into Vegas and I'm about to whoop his
ass. That's brilliant. Right. And it wasn't you who got picked for the first fight of the series. It was, of course, Peter Manfredo Jr., who was picked by Alfonso Gomez to fight. And from what I've read, this shocked the producers. They really weren't expecting it. Were you shocked?
Shocked that he picked Peter?
Yeah.
No, not really shocked. Nothing in boxing really can shock me. Mm-hmm. If anybody was shocked, it was probably Peter.
Right.
Meaning that it threw him off. He might have been thinking that he was going to be fighting somebody else, or that guy wasn't going to be the guy that was going to pick him. So when he gets picked by somebody that he thinks is not going to pick him, it can throw you off. Right. Like, Peter could have been thinking that he was going to fight somebody else, and he'll fight that person in his mind, how he may see that person training or how he knows that person fights. When he picks, I know he's going to pick me, so I'm going to fight him like this. But all of a sudden, that goes out the window because he's been picked by Alfonso Gomez.
Yeah. Were you confident that Peter would beat Alfonso?
I was. I thought he would win. But when he didn't win it, that fight was a reality check for everybody there.
And I've got a question about that in a moment, but when it came to fight night, it's considered that Alfonso Gomez versus Peter Manfredo Jr. is one of the best fights to have ever been contested on the Contender. Was it as good in the flesh as it was on the screens?
It was. I think they changed, the way they did the fights over the Contender seasons. But in our season, when the public looked at it, I guess they showed certain portions of the thing to, show on TV, and, they're showing certain shots. But in attendance after hours, they showed the whole fight. Mm-hmm. And it's compared and how the fight really was. Like you would turn to ESPN and watch a boxing match. I think that's how they should have showed our show, because at the end of Jesse Brinkley's fight and mine, the crowd was clapping their hands simultaneously and stomping on the bleachers, and they were saying, "One more round, one more round," because that means the crowd thought it was a tie.
Right.
And if they, I'm figuring we're gonna have to fight another one. So I'm standing there like getting myself ready because I'm getting ready to go another round. But they ended up giving the fight to Jesse. But if they would show that the viewers, I think things could have been a lot different.
It was Peter who did exit the show after losing to Alfonso, and just on things that were shown and not shown, Sergio Mora had said that Sylvester Stallone and the producers had favorited Peter Manfredo to win the show. Can you back up Sergio's claims at all regarding favoritism towards Peter?
Well, I guess that would be something that Sergio might have dealt with once I was out of the winner house or out of the Contender House.
Right.
Because once you're out of the Contender House and you go to the next house, which is called the Loser House, we don't see a lot of things that go on. So that could be something that Sergio could have felt in his spirit just from being inside the Contender House and around the other fighter that was still left while he was there. So, Peter, he's a well-known fighter. He was a well-known fighter coming into the Contender show. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure people in his hometown probably figured that he might be the one to win, because I think when he lost to Alfonso was his first loss as a pro. So that's probably what it was. That's why Sergio might have said that Peter was a favorite to him over the producers rather than he was.
And on what you alluded to earlier about it being a reality check once Peter exited the show, there were post-fight deliberations led by Ishe Smith in which you had said that you'd kind of got emotional seeing Peter lose, especially in front of his family, and then have to leave. Was it at that moment that this show kind of got real for you?
Oh yeah, it was serious business after that, man. I mean, once you saw Peter lose and he had to do the I call it walking the green mile. Mm-hmm. Walking out of there, hanging the gloves up on the wall. It was a reality check. Wow, you got in order to stay in here, you got to win. I mean, if I had to do it different, of course, I hope I would be on there a little longer. But it didn't happen like that. You just have to accept your cards where they lay, man, and play them the way you get them. And then expect it and try to do better the next time.
It got real for you, like you say, and whilst training, you were watched by other contenders, including Ishe Smith and Jesse Brinkley. Did you always have to have one eye over your shoulder whilst you were training or sparring?
No, I mean, I didn't always have to have one eye over my shoulder. If you do that, you can't really concentrate on the training that you need to do. It's easy for me or anybody else to look at somebody while they're training, and while we're looking at them, you say, "Oh, I can beat him," or "Hey, if he did that with me, that wouldn't be anything." It's easy to say that, but once you get in the ring with somebody, all of that can go out the window, because it's harder than you think it is once you're in there and inside the ring with them. Mm-hmm. All fighters, I believe, in a sense, have respect for each other. Whether I think I can beat this person or not, you're in boxing, and in boxing or any type of fighting art, you're going to get hit, and things can go in a direction where it's not to your favor. And when that happens, you have to be able to try to do something to overcome it.
Yeah. You had a couple of tricks up your sleeve, it seemed. Was it a veteran move or a game plan you decided upon coming into the Contender to hide your true capabilities during training or sparring sessions, as you knew that the other contenders would be watching you?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to think that I would do that anyway.
Okay.
Sometimes when we spar with some of the guys that they had us there sparring with, they would, I let the guys hit me with certain shots that I know I could get out of the way of. Mm-hmm. I let one of the guys sparring partners, he kept popping me with a jab. So if the other guys are looking, like, darn, Reid can't slip a jab or something, or Reid can't slip this punch or that punch. But when we get into the fight, it'll be something altogether different. The first round with Jesse and I, it seemed like the guys' facial expressions from looking at the show on my team was, oh man, we got this one in the bank. But Jesse, came back and did his thing, and the judges gave it to him. But if I could have, I guess, had a little bit more strength and put a little bit more effort into it, then it would have turned out altogether different.
We've already talked a little bit about this second challenge, and it was neck and neck and running for the flags up at the top of the Rose Bowl. But what happened? Because by the end of the challenge, when you had to assemble the flags to complete the puzzle, the two teams' puzzles looked very different.
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing challenges like that, you got energy and oxygen going all over creation. So you got the oxygen, your brain sits on it needs oxygen to function. So we did that challenge. Guys are tired from doing all the running. I mean, on both sides, but we couldn't figure out the puzzle, which was easy once you look at it. Their side said west, and our side would have said east, and we couldn't figure out. We could have figured out that it said east before they said before they figured out theirs said west. It would have been a lot different, but it didn't happen like that. So we just have to again play the cards where that it dealt to us, man.
And like in the previous episode, that meant that the West would get to choose who would be fighting. But when it came to choose the fight that was expected to be chosen, Ishe versus Ahmed, Ishe got cold feet, which led to Jesse choosing you to fight. Did you feel Jesse was biting off more than he could chew?
No, because I've always been taught you never underestimate anybody. Now, if I would have felt like Jesse was biting off more than he could chew, I would have went into the fight with the big head or thinking, oh, I ain't got to worry about this guy. And he get in there and do something and end up knocking me out because I'm going in there lackadaisical.
Right.
So, I didn't think he was biting off more than he could chew. I was just making sure that, I could have done, I was prepared to do what I needed to do in order to be victorious in the thing. But it went his way, and it is what it is, man.
Quite right. And following that, in the pre-fight press conference, Ishe threw his team allegiances away and gave you his support in wanting you to win and knock out Jesse. Was that something you'd expected?
No, I wasn't expecting it. I guess for some reason they were giving Ishe a hard time because they was trying to get Ishe to fight Ahmed. Mm-hmm. That's sort of like if you have a girlfriend and this girlfriend wants to marry you, and you, in your mind, you want to marry her too, but you want to marry her at your time. You want to pick that time to say, will you marry me? Right. You don't want her to pressure you and buying her a ring and pressure you into asking her to marry you. When you feel that pressure, you're going to back away from it. So I felt that Ishe was feeling pressure to fight Ahmed, and he's like, in his mind, like, wait a minute. Why in the hell they want me to fight this dude? I ain't the only one on the west side. Why can't one of these other guys fight the dude? Why they want me to fight? I said, no, you know what? I ain't going to do it. So, I mean, he did right. He didn't take the fight, and he did what he thought he should do for himself.
It was eventually Jesse and yourself who would go on to face each other, a fight which was very close, and you said something that we didn't get to see and didn't know, in that the crowd at the Contender Arena were chanting for one more round. You'd previously said that you had developed a fondness for Jesse Brinkley, and coming into the Contender, you had a big layoff from your last fight, which is why you didn't perform as well as possible. Which of those factors, or any others, hindered you from being the Jonathan Reid that you normally are?
It just being getting caught up in the brotherhood of the guys being in the house. We all became close to the point where, oh man, you find out you got to fight this person. Oh hell, I was just in the living room laughing and giggling with him the other night. Now we got to fight each other. That's something that as a professional fighter, we had to you'd have to look over. I would look over that and not be so hesitant to get in there and do what I need to do just because I'm fighting Jesse or just because I look at this guy. It was all about doing what we needed to do to get the money for your family. And if I would have went in there like that, I believe that some of this could have been a lot different.
You did end up exiting the show, and as you said, walking that green mile and putting your gloves on the board. Tell me how that felt.
It was not an easy thing to do, but it was something that I had to do. Like I said when I left, I believe it was everybody has a time. It's a time and a season. For everything. And it was just my time, to lose. So you only lose when you don't learn from it. When you lose and you learn from it, then it's not really a loss. It's a gain because it can help you in your next outing. knowing how the outcome can be and where you can sit and lay in a loss, I'd be hell to deal with if we had to do it again, man. I wouldn't want to be one of the first ones or first few ones to lose. Be sitting in the loser house waiting on the championship fight to happen.
Obviously, you've had a lot of time to contemplate your time on the show, being that we are coming up to nearly the 15th anniversary. Tell me about your immediate reaction to losing. You said on the show that after your loss you had to do a gut check to see if you wanted to continue boxing. Was retirement really a possibility to you?
No, not really. I mean, we say a lot of things when we fight and lose because we go into the ring wanting to win. We think we're going to win. No fighter walks to the ring and says, oh, well, I'm walking here to win. But when we don't win, then you be like, oh, damn. I wasn't expecting not to win this song, so then you do have to do a gut check and be like, do I really want to do this mentally all over again, going through the 8 weeks of training or however many weeks you train for a fight? Do I really want to go through it? So that was the main thing that I was talking about. Once you lose something, it takes time for you to get your head right, get your mind right, where you can get back acclimated to get back in there and start training hard to get ready for the next one.
That wouldn't be your final dealings with the show, though. You'd helped train Sergio Mora for the finale of The Contender, and you gained the public vote to fight on the undercard. Sum up your overall experience for me of your time on The Contender.
Well, my time on The Contender was a great experience because I got a chance to be around different guys that had different avenues, coming up in their life. You're around guys that don't fight the same. You're around guys that don't think the same. Helping Sergio get ready for Peter, although Sergio was the man that won, he's the one that walked away with the $1 million and the truck. It made me feel good that I was able to help prepare him to be able to do that. In one of the shows, I fought Miguel Espino. I thought the referee stopped the damn fight too fast.
Right.
Espino was throwing a flurry of punches. There wasn't no punches that was hurting me. But I had my hands up. He was hitting my gloves, and because I wasn't throwing anything back, I guess that's why the referee jumped in and stopped the fight. But again, life happens, and you get certain things dealt to you. You just gotta be able to play them daggum cards. And when you play the cards, if they don't fall where you want, where they may, or you want them to fall, you gotta pick them up and do something else.
You've spoken a little bit during this interview about what you would do differently if you had your time again. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more if you can?
I would be more not worried. I would be more concerned about my livelihood and not anybody else's livelihood. When you think about the concern of others, it can throw you off. It can leave some space for you not to be putting your all into what you need to be putting your all into. If you have 100% of a particular thing, and if 30% of me is worried about or thinking about the concern of somebody else, I'm only giving myself 70% when I need 100. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I would put 100% of all of my energy into myself, and if anybody had a problem with it, they just had to have a problem with it because I'm doing it for me. What Sergio wasn't on there trying to win $1 million for the other 16 guys or the other 15 guys that was on there. He was trying to win $1 million for himself and his family, and he did exactly that. So that's what I would do. I would put all my energy into wanting to win the thing and making sure that I was doing it 100% for me and not anybody else.
Jonathan, describe to me in your own words your career post The Contender, because you fought some notable names like Paul Smith and Caleb Truax. Did it help you being on the show? Tell us what happened after you left.
Well, my career after The Contender didn't go exactly how it should have went. I think because we were on The Contender, we had what you call a target on our back. Here you are, these guys, they've been on this boxing reality show. Hell, if we beat one of them, it'll be a good notch on our belt. So me being on The Contender, after being on The Contender, it opened some doors, but some of the doors that was open, things didn't turn out the way that they could have turned out.
That is it, isn't it? Sometimes that's the way of a boxer's career. It just doesn't quite work out the way we expect. And aside from that, have you kept in touch with anyone from the show?
Oh yeah, I keep up with the guys. A lot of the guys I keep up with through Facebook. One of the guys. Yeah, I was saying I heard about the passing of Jeff Fraza through one of the guys, and if we didn't keep up with each other, then we wouldn't be able to discuss or see things like that. But we had to hear about it through the media, through somebody else. But, I think we have a good enough relationship to where we can contact each other to the point where if I could contact one of the guys now, if I had to reach out to them through Facebook, if they saw that I reached out to them, they would, immediately get back in touch with me. I could leave my number on there or however it may be. They would get back in touch with me because we have a brotherhood. Whether you was on the west side or the east side, all of the guys that was on the show have a brotherhood. And if any one of them needed me for something, then I would bend over backward to make sure I could get over there to do it for them.
That's really good to hear that you keep in touch with the guys and have a brotherhood with them. You mentioned that you heard from the guys that Jeff had passed away, and speaking of the brotherhood, you'd go on to fight Defeer Smith, in which, coming into that fight, you said you would dedicate the win to fellow Season 1 member Najai Turpin, who tragically took his own life. Could you tell me a bit about what Najai was like to be around? He seemed like a nice young man from what we saw.
Najai was he was kind of a quiet guy. My dad has taught me over the years, the quiet ones are the ones you have to look out for. I didn't expect that Najai would do harm to himself to leave the face of this earth, because he didn't seem to come at me. He didn't come off to me as a guy that had a mental problem that would cause him to do something like that. But nobody never knows what you're going through in life. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you one thing: if anybody ever tells you that Jonathan Reid Dawg took himself out of here, you need to tell them they need to do a damn investigation. That's a lie. Cause it ain't gonna happen. I don't care what's going on in my life. I'm not gonna do anything like that to solve the problem, because the problem will not be solved.
It's one of those things now that's thankfully coming into boxing, what with Tyson Fury spreading the message as well as others, that if you need help, don't be afraid to seek the support out there, because it is out there for those who do need it. And if you could you speak a little bit about Jeff Fraza, Season 1 member who also lost his life?
Oh yeah, Jeff was in my corner when I fought Jesse, and he had a little I call him, he was a little short, fiery fella. I'm from a different side of the world than he is, and seems that the guys from the west side, some of the guys from the north side they just got a different roar, a different fight about themselves. And I saw that in Jeff. That's why I picked him to be in the corner with me. And I think if we'd have had a lot more time together to prepare, it would have been a different outcome of the whole thing. Jeff, I know he's truly missed by his family, and he's been missed by me as well. I'm sure some of the other guys that had a closer relationship to him outside of the Contender.
Well said, and I echo those sentiments also. So the biggest thing that I take away from the show is that it gives us an insight into the life, the motivations and sacrifices each fighter goes through whilst trying to make a success of the opportunity that they are given, which I believe is a great way to gain fans, because we attach ourselves to people the more we know of them. Do you think there needs to be more of this style of presentation available for fans to watch, as opposed to just having the traditional build-up we usually see when a fight comes around?
I think that's good. It's good for the public to see how a fighter prepares for a fight, number one. It's good to see the public, or it's good for the public to see the trials and tribulations that a fighter goes through or may have to go through during the time that the fighter's training. A lot of times, especially the girlfriends or the wives of fighters, they don't understand why you got to leave and go to another state or another city to train, and you got to be away from the family, from the kids for a long period of time just to get ready to fight somebody. That's because your mind has to be fully focused on the task at hand. Your mind don't need to be focused on, oh man, we need to figure out how we're gonna pay this bill. Oh man, we got to figure out why auntie don't have no food, or why this person don't have a job. We ain't got time for all that, because all of them people not going to be in the ring with you when that mamma jamma throwing them blows at you. Mm-hmm. There's only one of you in there taking them blows, and that's you as the fighter who has sacrificed his time and sacrificing his body to go through the things that the body goes through getting prepared for a fight.
Of course. Well said there, Jonathan. Let's move away from the Contender. I just have a few more questions to wrap up my time with you, for which I greatly do appreciate. Rydell Mayes is an up-and-coming southpaw heavyweight who credits you as one of his first trainers. Is that something you've looked to move into, training up-and-coming boxers?
Yeah, Rydell. Oh, Rydell. What you know about Rydell, man?
I've been doing my research.
Okay. I spar with that knucklehead. He be talking crazy in the gym. I don't train any fighters. I mean, I showed my face in one of the gyms around here yesterday, and everybody was excited to see me in there and was milking me for whatever information I could give them. I've been in the gym with Rydell and joked around, kidding with him. Every time I come in there, they always ask me if I got my stuff, if I want to get in the ring and move around. And I said, man, I ain't thinking about y'all. But being in the gym like that, I'm sure it's for all fighters. We still feel like we got at least one more left. I've always said I got one more left because I have not taken a lot of punishment throughout my career in boxing.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't taken a lot of blows, had a lot of injuries, things to that nature. So I could still get in there and do my thing at 46. And look like I was 26. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you.
And if any of these mamma jammas that is listening to this or is going to read up on it, if you don't believe it, just watch. You understand what I'm talking about? Going to be some changes, right?
And you have children of your own, Jonathan. Do any of your children wish to get into boxing?
Yeah, I got kids. My oldest son wants to box. He was at the gym with me yesterday, and I had him help me do something. I just try to get him to realize that, boxing is serious. And once you get out there and you get in there and good, and people see that you're good, you have to be able to think for yourself. You have to be able to know how to count your own money. You got to be able to know how to do whatever paperwork you need to do for your taxes and things to that nature. So when you get done boxing, you won't be walking around here, or you won't be one of the people that you see on the street sometime holding up a sign, anything to help, a little change here or a little change there. You want to have something to fall back on when you get done fighting.
Again, I completely agree with you there. That's not just great advice to give to your kids, but great advice for any up-and-coming boxer. Are you watching any of the current crop at all? Do you have a favourite?
Yeah, I look at Errol Spence.
Right,
and,
okay.
Errol Spence, who's not here, and then there's a fighter here in town in the Tennessee area, Caleb Plant. I used to spar with Caleb Plant when he was 12, 13 years old, and when I was sparring with him, he wasn't really into boxing then. He was still doing his kickboxing. Now, when we sparred, I said, you ain't never thought about boxing? I said, all you had to do is remember not to kick. He said, we hadn't really thought about it. But I said, man, you should think about it, man. And sure enough, he thought about it. He's out there doing it, and he's a champ.
And let me get your quick take of a few fighters that are in the middleweight division, which you were in. Tell me a little bit about Gennadiy Golovkin.
Golovkin is he's a crafty fighter. A lot of people may be nervous about him because he has a lot of power. But if you go in with the guy and you're not worried about his power, he's somebody that can be neutralized, with the right amount of training. But Gennadiy Golovkin he's a good fighter, and he's got a little bit more left in his tank, so to have a tremendous career for himself.
Tell me what you think about Cannel Alvarez.
To Cannel Alvarez? Cannel Alvarez, that man up there, he just comes straight at you, man. Cannel Alvarez again, as well as he's a good fighter, man. He's a young, hungry little Mamma Jam. That Mamma Jam hungry. I don't know when I'm sure he has a lot of power because he takes a lot of his opponents out. You could neutralize him like Mayweather did. He fought Mayweather, and Mayweather just touched him up, and made him look like he didn't know how to fight. I don't know if Alvarez was nervous because he was in there with Mayweather, but once every fighter has a rhythm, and once you recognize that fighter's rhythm, then they'll be easy picking, and I think that's why Alvarez was so easy for Mayweather, because Mayweather is he's a crafty counter puncher. Mayweather is just crafty. Period. That's some guy can look at you and tell how to beat you in one round or two, and then he'll get in there and do exactly that. But Cannel Alvarez, he's one to be reckoned with. I think if they had a match, if they matched him with Errol Spence, well, I think they're not really in the same weight class. But if they were ever at the same weight, I think that would be a pretty good fight to look at, man. Yeah. Errol Spence and Cannel Alvarez.
And as we were talking about Errol Spence, what do you make of a potential pound-for-pound clash in Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford?
Oh, Spence and Crawford?
Yeah.
Ooh, Lord, you sound like two people at my job. Who you think gonna win, Reid? I had to go with Errol Spence, man. Errol Spence is he can dance around the ring. He can switch up on you. He's got speed, and he's got a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? He's got a lot of wind. So, which means he can stand and fight for a long time and not get tired. So Yeah, Crawford, he's gonna try to come straight at you and knock your head off. And Errol Spence will capitalize off of that and touch him up with a couple of them jabs so they get ready to throw some of them stronger punches on him to put the young fella to sleep, man.
Jonathan Reid going for Errol Spence there, should that clash for pound supremacy ever take place. Jonathan, I won't keep you for too much longer. I only have a few questions left. Is Corrales versus Castillo still the best fight you've ever seen?
Yeah, I think so. That man, I can't remember who the hell he was fighting when they had Corrales. Depending on who the referee was, probably would have waved it off for Corrales to be knocked out. This fighter knocked down Corrales, and Corrales got up from the count and got up there and beat the crap out of the other guy, and ended up stopping the other guy, man. Mm-hmm. That man got some heart. Had some heart, God rest his soul. Yeah, Corrales, man, he was one to be reckoned with.
And my final question to you, Jonathan, to wrap up my time with you. I've been reading that you not only can box, but you also joined the list of boxers with musical bones. Is it true that you do a bit of R&B singing and have sung the national anthem at fights?
Oh yeah. Every now and then they'll ask me to do the national anthem, man. If I could, I wish I could get my foot in the door some kind of way when some of these guys have these big shows like PBC boxing. I would be the guy that they call to sing the national anthem, just like Michael Buffer is the man that they would call to do the ring announcing. If I could get my foot in that door to sing the national anthem and all of the fights that they have, I could make a living doing that, man. Because you got boxing all over the world, especially when they're going to have boxing on pay-per-view. I would be the man to sing the anthem. It's going to be on and popping.
Now, I know I said that was my last question, but I have to follow that up and ask you if you would do us the honour to close out this interview by singing the national anthem.
Oh, yeah, right now to the national anthem?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah, I got you. All right, here we go. All right. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hear at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight all the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streamed, and the rockets red glare, the bomb bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave from the land of the free and the home of the brave?
I'm not just saying this because you were on here with me, but genuinely that was really, really good. I'm sure the listeners would agree also. Honestly, that was amazing. Jonathan, I've kept you for long enough. I want to thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak with you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for answering my questions about the Contender, which I loved growing up as a kid and to this day. Hopefully we will see more of you soon, maybe back in the ring as a competitor or in the ring as a singer, singing the national anthem as brilliantly as you just did. But thank you so much to Jonathan Reid for joining me to talk a bit about his career in the Contender. Thank you so much.
All right, you're quite welcome, man. My pleasure.
And that was it. I really hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. Jonathan was really easy to talk to and a great guy. And to close this out, I want to thank you guys for listening. Let me know what you thought about some of the things he said. As always, you know the drill. If you liked the interview, smash the like button and let me know what you thought down below. It'd be great to get some feedback. If you are new here, subscribe because I have much more boxing content coming your way, and check out some of my other videos. I'm doing a series on the Contender which Jonathan was in, where I watch it back, talk about the action and throw in some jokes. And I'm doing a series on things boxing fans say, where I look at some of the comments boxing fans make on fights, and I throw a few jokes in on that as well. I do live streams for fights where you can join me and interact with myself and those in the chat whilst watching the fight, so we can get everyone's instant reaction on it. So yeah, it would be great to have you on board. If you're new here, do subscribe. For now, this was my interview with Jonathan Reid, the Contender Season 1 alumni. I have been forever your cornerman, Take Ames. I'll see you on Fight Night.